now called the City of San Angelo Development Corporation meeting to order. I'd like to ask Director Padilla to lead us in prayer this morning.
Please bow your heads with me. Dear Lord, I'd like to ask you to bless this board to make good, sound choices with the funds that we're responsible for. Also like to thank you for the recent rains that we've got and ask you to continue to send us more. I also like to just bless the kids as they start school today. Bless the teachers and administrators and everybody, Lord. Just please bless them to have a good, successful school year and keep them safe. And in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Now we're moving on to public comment. Issues or items that are not on the agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, beginning by stating their name and limited remarks to less than 3 minutes. Board members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The board takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Now open for public comment. All right, there being no public comment, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Consider approving the July 25th, 2018 meeting minutes. Consider approving the necessary corporation disbursements. Consider approving the July 28, 2018 financial statements. Consider approving a resolution adopting the investment policy, strategy, and broker-dealer list for the City of San Angelo and Costa DC for compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. Could I get a motion from the board?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Director Barrio, second.
Second.
Second by Director Padilla. All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Regular agenda item. Item A, update presentation regarding the Business Retention and Expansion Program, BREP, marketing campaign. Presentation made by Stephen McLaughlin, McLaughlin Advertising.
Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Thank you, Mr. Padilla, for including the kids and the teachers in the prayer this morning. Very timely. Okay, so we're coming up on, depending on how you want to look at it, about 4 months since we started our program for educating the public in general and business owners in particular on the BREP program, its existence, and what it can do for them. And so I thought this morning what we'd go over is just kind of what you can see out there already. You can hear local radio ads. Those have been running. Cable television ads are running as well, include a lot of different cable channels, Fox News, that sort of thing. With KLST, they've worked with us and provided us with a program under which we get a short name recognition mission statement ad that accompanies all of their newscasts, morning, noon, and night, without having the expense of having to buy commercials in the news. That's been very helpful to us. You may have seen on the streets, we now have 2 signs affixed to city buses, which take advantage of exposure to the large traffic counts of our city's main streets, and then the constant motion of the buses and driver's eye level. We have a very strong online effort going, and that's what this slide refers to. It's broken into 3 parts online. The display ads online are just the little, look like what you'd see in a magazine or a newspaper, little still ads with your message in them. Those to date have been seen over 2 million times, and over 1,300 people have clicked on those and come to the website. In terms of keyword searches with related keywords, the ads have been presented over 35,000 times, and 946 people have clicked on those. We also have a video element. Now, primarily that's going to be videos that come up in front of YouTube videos, but it's also, we don't have a lot of people in San Angelo that use streaming television, but this is presented to people who are using streaming TV. And you can see that that video has been presented just over 29,000 times. And one of the things that we like in our industry about online advertising is you get to watch it as it works, and you get to gauge people's reactions on a daily basis instead of just waiting until it's run and see what happens. One of the factors that we look for to see if we're on the right track is, of that 29,000 people, keeping in mind all of them have had the option to click off at the end of 4 seconds. Over 11,000 have chosen to watch the video past 75%. Almost 40%, 39.69, have watched the entire video. So that's a great number. I mean, if you think about your own online experience, how many videos do you watch all the way through to the very end? So that's been very good. Now, there's another aspect of the campaign that's a little different and a little unique to what we're doing here, because we have to figure that the first hurdle we have to overcome is public knowledge of BREP at all, what it is and what it does. Once you get past that, does that automatically mean the phones start ringing? No, we've never had anything in our experience to tell us it would. So you have to figure what's the secondary objection people have. And you'd think it would be that they would either be afraid that they wouldn't qualify, or they would presume they wouldn't qualify, or they think it's something that's too good to be true, or it's some kind of strings attached or some kind of a trick. So then you figure, well, the footprint of just this board and city staff itself is not big enough to be out in the public on a big enough scale. So that's why we adopted a program in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce, so that those business leaders that are involved with the chamber kind of become deputized to be our assistants in getting the message out there, and at least be there if one of their contemporaries is curious about it and wants to ask questions and sees them as somebody that's involved and plugged in and will know. So we've sponsored a seminar and some luncheons, and at those, there are these banners that greet people on their way in when they're coming into the serving line, so they can read about it while they're standing there waiting to get their food. And then on the tables, we have printed information that people can take with them, and we go and make sure every seat at every table has one. And then the luncheons begin with either a short video or personal comments by staff about the program, or a combination of both. By doing that, we think we can, and not just once, we're doing it several times over the course of this, we feel like you'll have chamber membership that's aware of the program and what it does, and can assure people that it's worth pursuing. So as you can see, we've tried to cover all the bases, from the internet to driving down the street to going to Chamber of Commerce meetings, so that we can overcome the lack of knowledge about the BREP program, because as we said before, we feel like it's a great use of the half-cent sales tax, and a great way to grow the economy and maintain the economy, but it can't work if people don't know about it. So with that, I think they do have the videos for you to look at if you'd like to. One of them is the video we use to kind of recruit the chamber members, and the other one is the one that you'll see online or on television. And then we can answer any questions. If you guys want to play that now, we can, or we can wait till after.
Based business ready to grow. To upgrade your facilities or equipment, or hire more staff, the Business Retention and Expansion Program from COSA DC is here to help you. They offer great incentives such as tax rebates, reimbursements for development fees and safety improvements, as well as grants for job creation and retention for businesses eligible by law. Local half-cent sales tax dollars working to retain and expand local business, to keep and create local jobs. BREP by COSA DC.
For your help and offering you help with BREP, the Business Retention and Expansion Program. Financial incentives are available for eligible local businesses. The law defines which business segments provide the defined primary jobs that can receive financial incentives from half-cent sales tax funds. COSA DC staff will happily help you or any potential candidate determine their eligibility. Using local half-cent sales tax dollars to help create or keep local jobs and expand local businesses is an important part of COSA DC's mission to help grow the local economy. As chamber members, you are the local business leaders in the best position to spread the word. Even if you yourself are not eligible or in need of assistance, please help us and the local economy we all rely on by letting other business owners know that BREP is here and ready to help right away. We are proud of our partnership with the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce and excited to support this chamber event. COSA DC, the City of San Angelo Development Corporation, and BREP, the Business Retention and Expansion Program.
Okay, and with that, any questions I can answer, anything you guys would like to weigh in on with me?
Comments from the board or questions? Appreciate the work.
Well, just real quick, Stephen, can we go back to that stats page real quick?
I assume we can.
The only question I had, I guess, is that pretty typical, like, for your ad to be seen that many times, and then, like, is that, okay.
Yeah.
Are those
And
pretty?
are you talking about the proportion of click-through versus how many
Yes, sir.
impressions? Yeah, and it depends on how you feed it. And remember that we did a brief campaign for BREP way back in the past, and one of the things that we learned was that when we got real specific, we weren't finding the business owners searching the more specific terms. So one of the things that we've done very intentionally on this one is we opened up what our demographic profiles are so that it shows more often, but then it kind of filters itself, you see. Yes, it's been presented in front of 2 million people, but not all of them, obviously. Let me back that up. I don't want to misstate that either. It's been shown 2 million times. That's not 2 million independent people. Now, all of those are not necessarily the ones we need to get the message to, but what we discover is it kind of filters itself. If you're not interested in that, if
Not
it
gonna
doesn't
click on
apply
it.
to you, you're not going to click on it.
Right.
And really, when it gets charged is by the clicks, not the impressions. So we take advantage of that so that we're creating top-of-mind awareness and, in a way, letting voters know what's being done with the funds, but the people it actually applies to are more apt to click on it, and that's the ones we pay for. So the rest of that is kind of a free benefit, if you will.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I understand the video, 39.69% watch the video 100%. So after 4 seconds, you said they have a chance, they can click the little skip ad?
That's correct. Now, the only place that doesn't apply is streaming TV,
Sure.
but in San Angelo, that's a minuscule amount of the percentage. It's almost all going to be YouTube videos, and there'll be some kind of relationship to what they've looked for, either at that moment or in the past, that puts them in our demographic, and that video will pop up. But all of them have the option to opt out of it at 4 seconds. So when you have 40% of them that watch the entire thing, that's really a great response.
So what triggers the video on a YouTube to, come up? Like, if I'm on YouTube, I get a Geico one or something like that. I mean,
The same thing.
it's just a random.
It is based on your personal demographic to a degree, or whoever else has been using that particular IP address to search or whatever. But it's geographic in that our video isn't shown outside of San Angelo, and then it's demographic in terms of your behavior and your search patterns online. And then Google's algorithm determines what ad to feed you into the YouTube channel, and then you decide whether you watch it or not.
Any additional questions from the board?
Okay, well,
Thank
thank
you.
you very
Appreciate
much. Keep it up.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to item B, a resolution authorizing the use of sales and use of tax funds in an amount not to exceed $121,000 to provide master planning services for a business and industrial park located at the City of San Angelo Airport, Mathis Field, with participation by the City of San Angelo for a project authorized under Chapter 505 of the Local Government Code by Type B Development Corporations. Presentation made by Bob Schneeman, Business Retention and Expansion Coordinator.
Thank you.
Morning, Bob.
Good morning. As you just read there, this is there are two functions here. One is identifying a project for infrastructure improvements at the airport, should they be required. And then the second thing is authorizing master planning services. Obviously, we need to plan and we need to look at feasibility before we would go into an infrastructure type of a project. Again, this is for master planning services, and it's primarily limited to the non-aviation portion of the airfield. There's some area there that's being opened up for development because of the closure of one of the runways, the crosswind runway 0927. In this area, of course, this is sort of the, below that line is sort of the airfield portion of the plan, and then everything above that is what would be considered not aviation related. City of San Angelo put out an RFQ for master planning services several months ago. Centurion Planning and Design was selected for the master planning services under the city's RFQ. And then the FAA has proposed an AIP grant, AIP 2018 grant, in the amount of $743,700 for payment of 90% of the allowable costs, with the other 10% being paid basically out of airport funds. Non-aviation related elements are not eligible for funding under that grant, and so the non-aviation master planning needs to be paid for by someone else. So staff obtained a proposal from Centurion for the master planning of the non-aviation related services and non-aviation related areas. And that's divided into 4 proposed tasks. The first thing is a review of existing facilities and assets, then a market assessment, and sort of an evaluation and feasibility study of what we may need out there, what is most likely to work in a business and industrial type park. Asset positioning is basically a land use plan to be developed for those areas. And then finally, we know that there are some challenges with particularly water and sewer, especially sewer at the airport. So we've included an element there to evaluate the on-site, particularly wastewater treatment plant. And there is also an old water treatment plant out there. Water Utilities doesn't feel that reactivating that water treatment plant would necessarily be economically feasible, but we're going to have the consultants look at it anyway and see if there is a potential use for it. Right now, it's being used for non-potable water storage for part of the fire protection system, and it may be that an expansion of that might make sense. There are some other potential water system expansion possibilities out there. And then, of course, the wastewater treatment plant, which is now not operational but can be made operational, and we just would like, especially on an interim basis, to have them look at the feasibility of opening that plant and maybe operating it for a short period of time over several years until the city's infrastructure is capable of taking on that additional load. The total fee for the contract is $120,991. And if it were to prove not feasible in, say, the first or second phase of the project, then we would come back to the board and ask if the board wanted to continue with the rest of the planning effort or not. Up front, I would recommend that we do that, to have a plan in hand should we suddenly be faced with a company that wants to move in and wants to locate at the airport. At least we would have a master plan to say, these are the things we need to do to accommodate that. Molly Waller is here from Centurion to answer any questions, and I'd like to give her an opportunity to come up and speak to you.
Good morning.
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 I'm here to answer any questions you might have. This is, as was indicated, it's essentially an add-on to the airport master plan that's ongoing to identify land uses and potential tenants and industries that could be attracted to the airport. So I'm here to answer any questions.
I guess so. You had mentioned phases with the master plan. I mean, you would focus on, is it 2 phases, 3 phases? I mean, can you elaborate a little bit more on the phase structure?
Well, and I can talk about this for days, so I'll try to streamline it for you guys. We're doing an airport master plan, and it's mostly focused to runways, taxiways, terminal building, hangars, things like that, and the FAA is funding that study. That plan is going to result in a 20-year vision for the airport, and it's demand-based. The airport has quite a bit of land that can be used for aviation purposes. It's in that business park area. So parallel to the master plan, as we're inventorying facilities, we're also going to be doing an economic evaluation to identify tenants that could benefit from the facilities at the airport, as well as the education, the training of individuals that are already in San Angelo. You've got folks that are trained to, airport mechanics, to do overhaul and things like that. So we're going to capture the entire city of San Angelo and identify industries that could be attracted to locate at the airport, whether that's a maintenance repair and overhaul facility, really capture that, and then that allows the city to go out and sell it to that specific market that requires an airport to do their operations. And so that's the goal, and as Bob indicated, once we do phase 1, once we inventory the city, we may come back and say, we've looked and you're doing all you can at the airport right now, so we would not suggest moving forward with phase 2 of the project. Or if we see there's some potential out there, we'll essentially put together a plan that can be used by the city to market at various kind of aviation-related conferences and things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I'm just curious, what is the process for identifying some of those businesses that would do well out there?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm going to compare this. This type of a study has been done at other airports across the nation. So I'm going to pull on the Albuquerque Sunport as the example because they recently completed a study such as this. They went out and they inventoried in Albuquerque. You had Kirkland Air Force Base, you had Los Alamos National Laboratories, you had Eclipse Aviation, you had all of these outside forces that were impacting the airport. So they went out and they facilitated meetings with all of those individuals in those groups, University of New Mexico, and they said, okay, what do you guys need so that you can co-locate, cohabitate, answer questions, move things forward? And they found that they needed an aviation technology park where they could bring in their suppliers, they could bring in all the folks they need to continue their missions forward. They've actually broke ground on this park, but it's essentially going out into the community, identifying assets that are out there that could use the airport and facilitating that conversation and moving those things forward.
Thank you.
Do you know preliminarily how much acreage is out there right now that would be available, or?
Not off the top of my head, is it about 120 acres?
I'd have to look that up, but I can get that to you.
You have some nice tracts of land that are large and contiguous that would be attractive. When we did some preliminary land use assessments as part of the runway closure study or the pavement evaluation, we identified there's some nice big chunks of land that could be used. One thing just for your information, when it comes to the airport, it's grant encumbered. And so the city cannot sell that land without going through an entirely another process. So we're going to be looking at folks that want to enter into a long-term lease, which is very attractive to specific industries. You know, oil and gas folks, not knowing how long they're going to be there, they look at leasing land and things like that. But I don't know the acreage off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
No problem.
Sorry. Can we go back a couple of slides to the grant? Right here. Ooh, one more.
There we go.
743.7 is going to be funded by the grant.
That's coming from the FAA, yes,
And that's 90%.
of the entire contract amount. The airport master plan in its entirety, with all that, everything that goes into that, is about $826,000. The FAA is paying for almost $44,000, and the remaining is coming from what are called passenger facility charges, the folks that land at the airport, to match that grant.
Just so I understand, there is a wastewater treatment plant at the airport,
That's correct.
and it is not in service.
It is not in service at this time.
My question is if we put that in service while we're trying to do all of this, are we going to have the issues that come from having a wastewater treatment plant right there? I mean, are businesses going to go out there and look at the real estate and be like, what is that smell?
No, it's located on the far side of the runway, in the airfield portion of it, and it's kind of at the back of the airport, if you would.
It shouldn't be an issue for people looking at real estate going, well, what's,
It should not.
okay.
Honestly, I didn't even know it was there, and I've been working at the airport for a long time. And as part of this study, what we're looking at is those two facilities, because we felt it was important to understand what it would take to get them online, just in case there would be an interested party that was going to require extensive water or wastewater. We didn't want to have any, well, in 5 years, we'll be making the improvements to get the wastewater situation taken care of. We wanted to see, okay, what's it going to take if you get somebody interested at the airport to be able to meet all their needs?
The infrastructure of the water around the airport and that side of the lake is limited. Is that?
That's correct, and the city is undertaking a study right now of what it's going to take to upgrade especially the wastewater collection system out there. Our study, we discussed this at length with water utilities. Our study will work with theirs. It's not necessarily redundant. We're looking specifically at airport needs.
All right.
Any other questions for the board for either party?
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, with there being no other discussion, we're going to move on to item C.
Mr. President, we do
sorry.
need action. on this.
Sorry, yes. We need a motion from the board for the allocation of the $121,000. Could I get a motion from the board? All right. Director Casillas, motion. I'll need a second.
Second.
Second from Director Coles. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Moving on to item C, discussion with no action, the contract between COSA DC and the Chamber of Commerce through September 30th, 2019. Presentation made by Guy Andrews, Director of Economic Development.
When this issue originally came up, my thought on action for this was to extend the existing contract for a period of 1 year that would allow both myself and Bruce Partain with the Chamber an opportunity to continue to observe. When I first took this job, one of the things that I said in my job interview is that I would do a lot of time or spend more time listening and finding out what's working and what's not. However, in this particular situation, what I think would be a good course of action, and I think that we still have time until September to look at that contract, would be to put together the subcommittee again to take a look at this. I think there's some very obvious things that we can tweak within the contract to make it more palatable to both sides. And one of the issues we've had is, and one of the things that I've found in looking at the contract is it's really not well defined in that contract what we're expecting the Chamber to report to us. And that's an issue that we need to resolve, and I think we can be more specific. As a matter of fact, I've attached a contract, and if you look at what the reporting requirements are, it refers you to an exhibit that has nothing to do with what those requirements are. So there's some confusion in that. I think that by putting together the subcommittee that we can iron those out and bring a contract back at the September meeting that will be palatable. Now, whether we extend that for 3 years will be a board decision, or whether we want to extend that for a year, put that in place for a year to continue to give us time to look at what the Chamber's doing, how they're compensated, that sort of thing. I think that would be the best course of action. So I'm recommending no action on it, but would recommend that the subcommittee take a look at this. And Mr. Carrasco and I discussed that this morning about who that committee is, subcommittee is composed of. Is actually 2 board members who were originally appointed to that are no longer on the board. Replacements are there. Of course, Mr. Partain would be a participant in that, myself, our chairman, and then whoever else that Mr. Carrasco feels would be good to appoint to take a look at that contract. But we would meet quickly and try to hash out those details.
Any comments from the board as far as guidance for, I guess, the subcommittee, or just suggestions? Like I said, this is just discussion items, nothing voted or anything, just kind of addressing any concerns or that could be brought up to Guy or the board as a whole right now.
We have a copy of the contract.
There is one included in your packet, right? Now that's the modified to make it a year, but nothing changed in it, so that's basically the contract.
Currently, the contract that's in place is a 3-year contract, and it's about 15 pages long, so it's pretty defined, and certain thresholds to be met, things of that nature. So that's one of the reasons we, feel that this is a time to kind of, actually, the contract is expiring, so this is the perfect time. We do have new folks in different positions, both at the chamber and with our board. So, as Guy was mentioning, I think it's best for both parties just to kind of look at it and see what's going to work better with the new guidance. So,
I think if we can identify a couple of board members that would serve on that, well, we'll be glad to put those meetings together, get the parties together, and get this moving forward just as quickly as possible.
I think a great course of action is what we're doing, making a subcommittee, going through the contract that the chamber doesn't care for, and a lot of us, once you read through it, we understand why, and so we want it changed just like they do. And so I think doing this, making these changes to the current one, and putting a 1-year stamp on it, in my opinion, would be nice. Because they have changes, we have changes, and that allows y'all to make some more changes over the next year and then come back in a year and really be able to hammer out a good, solid contract between the two of us.
Well said.
And so I would be in favor of that.
any additional comments for Guy or I guess myself?
Okay, thank you. We'll put that together just as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you. Thanks, Guy.
All right, moving on to item D, consider approving a change order to AEP contract with Crossland Construction Company, Inc., in the amount of $6,037. Ask that Mr. Bob Sneeman come up and make that presentation for us.
Thank you. As the board's aware, AEP has been on a very short time fuse to get their building completed and to move in. And as a result, we contracted with them through a development agreement to do a portion of the street improvements, water, sewer, and drainage improvements that were required to get them in their building. Those were also part of the requirements in the real estate contract. In doing that, we took 3 bids from their contractor, 2 of which included a significant amount of drainage improvements, which the board, at staff's recommendation, decided to delay until the next phase, what we're calling 2.2 of the project, which we're about to go out to bid for. As a result, there's going to be a low water crossing where Gateway Drive crosses the existing channel. And so we had to make some modifications to the street improvements, which will be temporary, but basically it amounts to deleting 114 linear feet of 24-inch curb and gutter, so that would be standard curb and gutter, and replacing that with 114 linear feet of sawtooth curb and gutter. The deletion was about $1,600. The addition is about $3,600. We'd also be adding 4 signs, 2 of which are sort of flood warning signs and 2 are flood gauges, or water level sort of gauges, if you know what I mean. And then there's insurance and profit and overhead for the primary contractor. So the total change order is $6,037. If anyone's wondering what sawtooth curb looks like, this is the curb in place. And while I'm on this slide, I will tell you that I expect they're probably going to start paving the street today. They're really moving ahead, and you can see the AEP building in the background is also going great guns. So we're asking that the board approve the change order in the amount of $6,037.
Where is this going to be located?
Sorry?
Is this what we're looking at, what we're approving?
Basically, yes. And by way of location, if you recall when we were out there in the bus, the center of the cul-de-sac was about right there.
I'll make the motion that we approve it.
I'll second.
Okay, have a motion by Director Barrio, second by Director Padilla. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item E, consideration of a resolution making application to the City Council for approval of a second amendment to the Articles of Incorporation providing for term limits of its board members. Mr. Guy Andrews is presenting.
You recall, council recently passed an action that stated that boards would be limited to 2 3-year terms, which actually conflicts with our particular charter for the Development Corporation. To resolve that particular issue and to get really into something that's more palatable for us, we're proposing a resolution. And I apologize, I'm going to need to send this to you. My inexperience with the system, I didn't get this resolution, but let me just read it, what the resolution would state. We would restate a paragraph that would say, each director shall hold office for a term of 2 years unless sooner removed or resigned. From and after September 4, 2018, no director shall serve more than 3 consecutive 2-year terms. For the purposes of this section, the City Council for the City of San Angelo shall have authority to make future appointments to the board for terms less than 2 years in a manner that will stagger board member terms. That was the major issue that we had, was that the original resolution said that all the terms would be at the same time, which of course would be not a good thing for our board to have all the members going off at the same time. So by approving this particular resolution, what we're saying is, we're going to comply with the term limits for the board for a total of 6 years, but it gives us the ability to then stagger those terms. So I would recommend approval of this particular resolution.
Just one quick question on that. After the term limit timeframe expires and a board member is off the board, is it possible to be reappointed and the cycle start again?
Good question. I'm going to refer to our attorney. Good question, by the way.
Yeah, it says 3 consecutive terms, so you would just sit out 1 term, and then you could be appointed again.
Okay, thank you.
And you would then have 3 consecutive terms that you would be.
The clock starts again.
Right.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Director Barrio, second by Director Dindal. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item F, consider a resolution authorizing the use of sales and use tax funds in an amount not to exceed $46,435 to provide an economic development incentive to U.S. Customs and Border Protection air and marine operations with participation by the city for a project authorized under the Texas Economic Development Corporation Act, presented by Bob Schneeman.
Good morning again. As the board may recall, about 3 months ago, we approved a small project with Customs and Border Patrol that also sort of established our incentive intent to incentivize them anyway. And that was for upgrade of some air conditioning units that were required in the hangar, and we considered that to be phase 1 of that those incentives. Phase 2 involves some ramp improvements. Border Patrol is currently located at 8210 Hangar Road. They have about 60 employees, and any agreement we do with in regard to that would require the retention of those employees. They also have the potential for creating an additional 60 positions that average about $120,000 a year, so they're very well-paid positions. And the intent of our incentive is to incentivize permanent assignment of the unmanned aviation vehicle operations at Mathis Field or the airport. And it's going to require an economic development agreement with the city of San Angelo, basically the airport. As I said, this is what it's all about, the drones out there that they don't like to call drones. This is the existing Customs and Border Patrol hangar, and the area that we're talking about doing things in now is this area right here. That would include paving and some permanent foundations for some of their equipment. They're looking at doing 2 of these GDT towers. I'll show you a picture of those in a minute. And then 2 permanent pads for the basically the pilot units. And then there's also some additional paving. We don't know the exact configuration of that yet that would occur in this area. This is what the towers look like and the antennas look like. As we go through the proposal in a minute, you can see the superstructure of the towers. Part of the proposal that we have is for design of those towers. We don't know that it's necessary, but it was included in the proposal in the event we need it, so that can be just opted out of in the proposal should an adequate design already be available, which I suspect it probably is. So the basic breakdown of the proposal then is geotechnical investigation, about $9,000, engineering topographic survey, $1,700, foundation design, which would be the foundations for those towers that we just looked at, is about $4,000, tower design, if necessary, about $4,600. Then a 90% design submittal, which would include, would exclude the geotechnical survey and structural, but would include the additional pavement and some drainage design and that sort of thing, is about $15,000. Then any comments and everything incorporated for 100% submittal would be another $5,000. Bidding support, if required, would be $1,500, and construction phase services, if requested, would be another $5,500. So you could start subtracting those if we elect not to exercise those options. We would be taking that off of that $46,000. So, but we are asking the board to approve the entire $46,000 should we need it.
Questions?
I have a question. Is this for the planning and design, or is this the actual work itself?
This is the engineering design of the foundations and the hard stand areas, and then some additional paving that also has some drainage issues connected with it.
So then the actual work of concrete work and stuff is a separate proposal? Then?
That's correct.
Okay.
Do we know a time frame for completing this, Bob?
As soon as possible.
We like that. I'll make the motion, we approve.
Okay, motion's on the
Second.
floor by Director Barrio, second by Director Casillas. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Moving on to closed session, executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, exception to requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. A, Section 551.087, to deliberate regarding commercial or financial information that the board is receiving from business prospects with whom economic development negotiations are being conducted, and discuss financial or other incentives relating to the following projects. MedHab LLC, Project 2018-B223, Project 2018-S224, Project Globe, Project PAC, any business prospect for whom the board is receiving commercial or financial information relating to economic development negotiations. It is now 9:18, and we are now in executive session. We are out of executive session. There being no follow-up administrative issues, I'll make the motion to adjourn the meeting. So moved. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
He made the motion.
We're now adjourned.
Seconded it.